We don't have time for this. That phrase cut my farewell speech short. 3 hours later, after I'd left the building, 7 international investors arrived, and they refused to meet with anyone but me. They thought they had me cornered. Instead, I was about to open a door they never saw coming. My name is Peyton Turner. I am 35 years old, and until 10 o'clock this morning, I was the lead RD specialist for audio signal processing at Resonex Labs. The air in the main conference room was stale, smelling of burnt coffee and industrial carpet cleaner. It was the monthly all hands, a mandatory gathering I usually found inefficient. Today, however, it was my platform for a goodbye. Behind me, the 80-inch screen glowed with my final slide. It wasn't a collage of smiling team photos or a list of corporate platitudes. It was data, hard, undeniable data. What these metrics represent, I started, my voice clear and strong despite the knot in my stomach, is a fundamental shift, an 82% increase in speech recognition for users with profound high-frequency loss, 4,900 individual community fittings completed in the last 2 years alone. This isn't just about market share. I clicked, and a waveform appeared, complex and dense. This is the sound of our AEP3 algorithm isolating a child's voice from the noise of a crowded cafeteria. This is the science. I was about to transition to my thanks to Lena, my lead engineer, who saw patterns in noise that I missed, to the entire RD team who believed in the community program when management just saw a balance sheet liability. We don't have time for this. The voice was flat, devoid of emotion, and loud. It sliced through the room's respectful silence like a utility knife through a canvas. I paused. The catered pastries on the side table suddenly seemed obscene. Derek Vale, our new chief technical officer, was standing near the doorway. He hadn't even bothered to sit down. He'd been with Resonex for exactly 7 weeks, a whirlwind of buzzwords and disruptive management theory. He looked at his watch, a comically large silver thing, as if he were timing an Olympic sprint. "Peyton, we have the North Star investor deck to get through," he said. Not to me, but to the room. "We're running behind. Get out. Get out. Not, thank you for your time, or we'll miss you, or even a curt, that will be all. Just get out." The room's atmosphere collapsed. 21 faces, my colleagues, my team, the people I had mentored and fought for, snapped down. Eyes studied shoelaces, notepad doodles, the wood grain of the heavy table. I saw Lena Parkhurst's knuckles turn white as she gripped her pen. I saw Harold Sutter, the chairman of the board, sitting in the front row, simply smoothed the crease in his trousers, his face a mask of neutral interest. He said nothing. No one did. A few pairs of eyes flickered up to mine. They were filled with a burning, impotent apology. They were afraid of Derek, afraid for their jobs, afraid of the silence. The blood drained from my face. I could feel the hot pulse of humiliation in my ears. But 7 years of fighting for budgets, for headcount, for the very right of my project to exist, had forged something hard inside me. My hands, however, were not in on the secret. They trembled. I turned my back to the room for a moment, focusing on the simple, mechanical task. I gripped the HDMI cable and pulled. The projector screen snapped to a bright, accusatory blue. I folded my laptop. The metallic click of the lid closing sounded like a gunshot in the silence. I turned back, picked up my device, and walked toward Derek. I did not rush. I did not look at the 21 pairs of shoes. I stopped a respectful 2 feet from him. "I understand," I said. My voice was perfectly calm, perfectly professional. It was a voice I didn't recognize as my own. He didn't nod. He didn't move. He simply stared past me, already focused on the next item on his agenda. I walked out of the conference room. I walked down the long, gray-carpeted hallway, past the motivational posters espousing innovation and synergy. I badged out through the security turnstile. The hydraulic hiss and click felt final. The bright spring sunshine in the parking lot was a physical assault. It was too cheerful, too alive. It felt like a mockery. I fumbled for my keys. my calm facade holding for the precise 30 seconds it took to get to my car, unlock the door, and slide inside. I closed the door. The sound-dampening interior of the 10-year-old sedan sealed me in, and I shattered. It wasn't a delicate cry. It was a raw, ugly, gulping sob that tore itself out of my chest. 7 years of my life, poured into the code, the algorithms, the late nights, the weekend trials. I had built the community testing program from nothing. I had sourced the first used audiometer myself. I had personally trained the first group of volunteers. I remembered a meeting 3 years ago. An executive, long since golden parachuted out, had looked at my initial proposal and laughed. "Peyton, this is heartwarming," he'd said. "But it's a money pit. We sell premium hardware to hospitals, not give away charity work in church basements." He hadn't understood. The community program wasn't charity. It was the most valuable RD pipeline we had. It was where the algorithm met reality. It was where we found the edge cases, the noisy environments, the specific, heartbreaking failures of existing technology that no sterile lab could ever replicate. It was the source of the 82% improvement. It was the entire reason for the 4,900 success stories. It was, I knew, the real reason the North Star Impact Fund was even interested in us. My sobs slowed. The anger was coming in, hot and clear, burning off the fog of humiliation. Derek hadn't just insulted me, he had insulted the work. He had, in his arrogant ignorance, dismissed the very soul of the company. My phone buzzed on the passenger seat, probably HR, wanting my exit interview, or IT, reminding me to surrender my laptop. I ignored it. I could go home. I could crawl into bed, pull the covers over my head, and let the shock and grief win. I could call my lawyer. I could update my resume. No. I wiped my face with the back of my hand, leaving a salty streak on my skin. I put the key in the ignition. The engine turned over with a familiar, comforting rumble. I wasn't going home. I wasn't going back to that glass and steel box to hand over my laptop to a security guard. I put the car in reverse. I was going to the Riverbend Community Clinic, the first one I had established, the one they called a church basement. I had appointments, real ones. My purpose wasn't in that conference room. It wasn't on a slide deck for investors. It was in a cramped, poorly lit room with a folding table and the best audio equipment I could beg, borrow, or build. I pulled out of the parking lot, not even glancing back at the gleaming Resonex Labs logo on the building. "If the science doesn't touch real people," I said aloud to the empty car, my voice rough, "all the charts are just noise." The Riverbend Community Center smelled of stale coffee, industrial floor wax, and the faint, sweet scent of chalk from the preschool in the basement. My clinic was a converted storage room, painted a color I called aggressive peach. It was cramped. The fluorescent lights buzzed at a near-perfect F-sharp, and the furniture was a mismatched collection of donations. It was heaven. My equipment sat on a folding table, a portable diagnostic audiometer I'd gotten donated from a university that was upgrading, my laptop, and a heavy-duty, reinforced steel cabinet. That cabinet, filled with prototypes, was the real treasure of Resonex Labs, whether they knew it or not. My first appointment was already waiting patiently. Her hands folded over a worn leather purse, Ruth Alvarado, 76 years old, with the ramrod straight posture that only decades of professional musicianship can instill. She was a former violist for the City Chamber Orchestra. "Peyton, dear," she said. Her voice was like dry paper, the higher frequencies lost to age and a lifetime spent in front of the brass section. "I don't have time for pleasantries today," I smiled, pulling up her file. "What's the emergency?" "Ruth? Sophia, my granddaughter. She has her first solo recital this weekend. Bach, the concerto in D minor." She leaned forward, her eyes intense. "I have to hear her. I mean hear her. The ones the insurance paid for." She tapped the beige device almost hidden in her white hair. "They make it sound like a broken telephone. I get the volume, but not the..." She searched for the word. The texture, the soul, it's just noise. I understand, I said, and I did. This was the failure of standard amplification. It was a sledgehammer approach, blasting every frequency equally, turning a symphony into a wall of mud. I brought something new for you, I said, opening my laptop and powering on the interface. From the locked cabinet, I took a small case. Inside, nestled in foam, was a set of prototypes for the AEP-3, Adaptive Envelope Processing, Iteration 3. This was my life's work. It wasn't just amplification. The AEP-3 constantly sampled the acoustic environment. It didn't just boost sound, it curated it. It ran a real-time analysis to separate primary speech, or in this case, a solo instrument from the ambient noise. It didn't just make things louder, it made them distinct. It protected the subtle harmonic envelopes that make a viola sound different from a violin. I gently removed her old devices and fitted the AEP-3 prototypes. I connected them wirelessly to my laptop. Okay, Ruth, I'm loading the profile we built last month, but I'm enabling the new music protocol. I ran a quick diagnostic tone sweep. Her chart appeared on my screen. The familiar sharp cliff, where her high-frequency hearing simply vanished. All right, I said. I have a recording. It's the same piece. I clicked the file. A high-fidelity recording of the Bach concerto began to play through my studio monitors. The orchestra swelled, and then the solo viola line emerged, clean, aching, and rich with harmonic detail. Ruth sat perfectly still. Her eyes, which had been dull with frustration, widened. She didn't breathe. Her hand, marked with the papery spots of age, rose slowly, not to her ear, but to her mouth, as if to catch the sound. A single tear welled and spilled, tracing a slow path down her cheek. She didn't wipe it away. She leaned forward, her eyes closing, her entire being focused on the sound. We sat like that for the full 3 minutes of the passage. When the music faded, she was silent. The only sound was the F-sharp hum of the lights, which suddenly seemed intolerably loud. She finally opened her eyes and looked at me. They were shining, clear. "Peyton," she whispered, her voice thick. "I can hear the bow. I can hear the rosin on the string." She took a gasping breath. "I can hear the sound of the wood." My own throat tightened. This was it. This was the data point. This was the 82%. This was the metric that mattered, as if summoned by the devil. My phone, which I'd left on the table, began to vibrate. It was a violent, angry buzz, skittering across the laminate surface. I glanced down. A text from Lena Parkhurst, my senior engineer. I pressed the button to silence the call that was coming through, my finger brushing over the screen. "Sorry," I said to Ruth. "Let's just save this profile. I want you to take these home, wear them to the recital." My phone buzzed again, and again, relentlessly. I ignored it and turned my full attention back to Ruth. She left minutes later, clutching the prototype case like a holy relic, promising to call me the second the recital was over. My next appointment was already at the door. Mike, a 45-year-old construction foreman, years of jackhammers and compressors had chewed his hearing to pieces. For him, it wasn't about music. "She says I'm ignoring her, Doc," he said, gesturing to the hallway where his wife was waiting. "I'm not. I can't hear her if the TV is on, or at a restaurant. It's just a wall of crap." For Mike, I loaded a different profile. I activated the AEP-3's aggressive speech and noise filter. I ran a test file, a recording I'd made in a crowded sports bar. Then I overlaid a separate track of a woman's voice. His eyes lit up. "Holy hell, she's clear. It's like she's right here and the rest is somewhere else," he grinned. "She's going to hate this. Now I'll hear everything." As he left, my phone lit up the desk. It was a constant, pulsing, insistent glow. My last appointment was Alex, a 16-year-old with auditory processing disorder. His ears worked fine. His brain just couldn't sort the signals. For him, I used a third, experimental function of the AEP-3. It didn't just filter, it subtly retimed the signals, adding a few imperceptible milliseconds of delay to the ambient noise, giving his brain time to process the primary speaker. We spent an hour fine-tuning it, him describing the shape of the sound until it felt solid to him. By the time Alex and his mother left, it was mid-afternoon. The aggressive peach walls seemed to be closing in. My phone's screen was dark, but the notification light was blinking frantically. I finally picked it up. It was a tactical high-level bombing. 22 texts, 9 missed calls. My lock screen was a waterfall of panic. The first was from Lena Payton. "Where are you? The North Star Impact delegation arrived early. They are here, now." A second. 10 minutes later. They just sat through Derek's presentation. He's showing them futures and PE ratios. They look bored, or angry, both. A third Payton, they are asking for you, by name. They keep asking, where is the community program lead? Where is the real-world data? Derek is stalling. And then, the heavy artillery. A string of texts from Harold Sutter, the chairman of the board. "Call me. Urgent. Payton, this is an ill-timed misunderstanding. Call me. The disbursement decision is being made today. This is not a drill. Call me ASAP." I read the messages, and the hot shame of the morning was replaced by a sudden, icy clarity. They hadn't come to see Derek's spreadsheets. They hadn't come to admire the brushed aluminum. They came for the 82%. They came for the 4,900 fittings. They came for Ruth, and Mike, and Alex. Derek had told me to get out, but the men with the checkbook were asking for me to come back. I finished my notes. I logged the new profiles, encrypting the data and saving it to my secure, off-site backup. I scheduled follow-ups for Mike and Alex. I sent one last text message to Ruth. "The profile is locked in. There's no fee. Ruth, just one condition." I waited a moment. "You just have to tell me how the recital goes." I put my phone in my pocket. I closed my laptop, packed my gear, and locked the steel cabinet. I walked out of the Riverbend Community Center, past the smell of chalk and floor wax, and pulled out my phone. I looked at the missed call from Harold Sutter. I took a deep breath, the spring air sharp in my lungs, and pressed the callback button. Harold Sutter picked up before the first ring finished. His voice was a strained, hearty baritone, a sound I associated with shareholder meetings and feigned optimism. "Payton, thank goodness. We seem to have a wire crossed here. A terrible misunderstanding this morning." I stood on the sidewalk, the city traffic providing a gray, rushing soundtrack. I did not help him. I did not say, "It's okay," or "Don't worry about it." I waited. "Harold," I said, my voice perfectly flat. "I was publicly terminated this morning. I'm not sure what part of 'get out' is a misunderstanding." A huff of air on the other end of the line. Annoyance. He wasn't used to being challenged, not even by people who still worked for him. "Derek's management style is abrupt, a regrettable lapse in protocol. But Payton, that's not important right now. What's important is that the North Star delegation is here." "I'm aware," Lena texted me. Good," he said, rushing on. "They arrived early, and Derek took the lead on the presentation." I could picture it. Derek, with his silver watch and his slides full of hockey stick revenue projections, talking about market disruption and synergistic rollouts. "They're not just North Star. Payton," Sutter's voice lowered, losing the forced cheer and gaining a new, sharp edge of panic. "It's a consortium. The North Star Impact Fund is the lead, but they've brought the Vital Ear Hospitals Coalition with them. They represent a network of over 300 public health clinics. This isn't just about venture funding. This is about a nationwide distribution contract." I felt a cold, clean shock. This was bigger than I knew. The community model wasn't just a passion project. It was the key to unlocking the public health sector. A market Resonex had been failing to crack for a decade. "And Derek is presenting to them," I stated, not as a question. "Derek presented," Sutter corrected. The word practically spat. He was 15 minutes into his P&L projections when the lead investor, a Dr. Amara Feld, cut him off, mid-sentence. Sutter's voice was tight with a mixture of horror and awe. She held up her hand and said, "Mr. Vale, these numbers are fiction. We are here to see the community model. Where is the field data? Where is Peyton Turner?" There it was, the moment the entire glass and steel headquarters pivoted on a single axis, and that axis was me. I stood on a grimy city sidewalk, holding the entire future of Resonex Labs in my hand. "Peyton," Sutter said, his voice now stripped of all pretense. It was raw, pleading. "I have 7 of the most important people in our industry sitting in the boardroom, drinking stale coffee and staring at Derek. I need you here. What gets you back in this building right now?" The humiliation of the morning, the tears in the car, the 7 years of being called a money pit, it all coalesced into a single, hard, diamond point of clarity. I was not the one who had been humiliated. I was not the one who was desperate. I looked at a bus pulling away, its diesel fumes acrid in the air. "This is not a negotiation about my old job." "Harold," I said. My voice was calm, the voice of someone reading the terms and conditions. "That job ended this morning. Peyton, for God's sake, don't play games. What do you want?" "A new title, a bonus." "Name it." "I want a new division," I said. "It will be called the Equitable Access Division. It will be fully independent of Derek Vale and the entire technical branch. It will have its own budget, dedicated and non-revocable, reporting directly to the board of directors, and its sole mandate will be the expansion of the community model, starting immediately." Silence. A thick, heavy, expensive silence. I could hear Sutter breathing. I could hear the faint click-clack of his executive desk toy. "That's a significant restructuring. Peyton, to be decided in an afternoon." "Or not," I said. This was the moment. This was the leverage I had been given. "Or I take the model and spin it out," I continued, the words as clear as the code I wrote. "I'll form an independent research institute, a nonprofit, the tech, the data, the community leaders. They're loyal to the mission. Harold, not to the Resonex logo." I let the next part land with surgical precision. Dr. Feld from North Star and I spoke at a symposium last year. She made it very clear. She told me they fund models, not corporate job titles. If I build the institute, I am absolutely certain she will fund it. I had just pulled the pin on a grenade. I had threatened to walk away with the company's crown jewels, the very thing the investors were here to see, and I had just told him I could take their money with me. The silence stretched. 5 seconds, 10. I could hear him calculating. The loss of the investment, the loss of the Vital Ear contract, the PR nightmare of the lead scientist walking out on the day of the crucial meeting, the sheer naked fact that I had him, and he knew it. "Be at the office in 60 minutes, Harold Sutter said, and the line went dead. I looked at my phone. The call was over. My heart was hammering against my ribs, not with fear, but with adrenaline. A new text message notification lit up the screen. It was from Lena. Chaos, absolute chaos on the exec floor. Sutter just stormed out of the boardroom. Derek is in his office with the door shut, and I can hear him shouting at someone on the phone. "Everyone is trying to find you. What did you do?" I took a deep breath. The diesel fumes replaced by the sweet, sharp smell of victory. I typed back a simple reply. "Hold the team. I'm on my way." I walked back through the same glass doors I had fled hours earlier, the lobby's polished marble, which had felt like an ice rink of humiliation, now felt like a stage I was about to own. Frank, the day shift security guard, was at his desk. This morning, he had been a model of professional discretion, studiously looking at his monitor as I, his boss's RD lead, choked back sobs on the way out. He saw me now. His posture, usually relaxed, straightened. He stood up. He didn't just buzz the turnstile. He pressed the button to open the main glass gate, stepped out from behind his desk, and held it open for me. He gave a single, short, crisp nod. It wasn't pity, it was a salute. The executive elevator chimed open. Harold Sutter was inside, looking haggard. He was not alone. With him were Maya Crenshaw, our CFO, and Eldon Price, our general counsel, the holy trinity of Resonex power, all here to escort a single, unemployed engineer. "Peyton," Sutter said, his voice a low, urgent rumble. "Thank you for coming. They're in the main demo room. They're waiting." "They've been waiting for 7 years." "Harold," I said, stepping into the car. The doors slid shut, sealing us in. Maya Crenshaw, a woman who viewed the world as a series of spreadsheets, gave me a tight, appraising look. Her eyes flicked down to my shoes, still dusty from the community center, then back to my face. "Your terms are aggressive, Peyton." "My results are aggressive. Maya, an 82% improvement rate, 4,900 community fittings. Those are aggressive numbers." Eldon Price, a man who spoke only in liabilities, cleared his throat. "We're all hoping for a smooth, collaborative presentation." "I'm not here to present," I said, as the elevator chimed, the doors opening to the silent, carpeted executive floor. "I'm here to explain the work. It's your job to make it smooth." They led the way. The atmosphere on the floor was like a vacuum. Assistants were frozen at their desks, pretending to type. Every door was closed. We reached the main demo room. The heavy oak door was slightly ajar. I could hear a voice. Derek's. He was still talking. "And so the synergistic Q4 rollout, leveraging our premium hardware channels, will maximize hospital-side revenue capture, projecting a..." Sutter pushed the door open, not bothering to knock. The scene was a portrait of corporate death. Derek Vale was at the main podium, his back to us. The 80-inch screen behind him glowed with a spreadsheet so dense with financial projections it was meaningless. Seated around the massive table were the investors, 7 of them. They were not the fleece vest and sneakers venture capital types. These were serious people. A woman with piercing, intelligent eyes who had to be Dr. Amara Feld. 2 men flanking her who looked like endowment managers, and most importantly, a man at the end of the table with a public hospital system logo on his binder, the Vital Ear Hospitals Coalition. They were not looking at Derek. They were looking at their phones, at their coffee cups, at the ceiling. Their boredom was a palpable, physical force in the room. As we entered, all 7 heads snapped to the door. Dr. Amara Feld's entire demeanor changed. The flat, polite boredom vanished, replaced by a quick, sharp, assessing focus. She stood up. "Ms. Turner," she said. Her voice was clear and carried easily. "I'm Amara Feld. We spoke at the Boston Symposium last year." "Dr. Feld, a pleasure to see you again," I said. I walked past Derek, who had frozen mid-sentence, his mouth still half open. I went straight to the auxiliary console, unplugged his laptop's HDMI, and plugged in my own, the one I'd had at Riverbend, the one with the real data. "Peyton," Derek sputtered, his face turning a dark, mottled red. "I am in the middle of the hospital revenue projections." "No, Mr. Vale, you are not," Dr. Feld said. Her voice was arctic. It cut through the air and silenced him instantly. "You have been describing profit centers for 20 minutes. We are here to understand impact. We can read a balance sheet on the plane. Please," she said, turning back to me, her voice warming instantly. "We've been waiting for your field data." Derek looked at Sutter. Sutter looked at the floor. Maya was suddenly fascinated by a hangnail. Eldon had vanished. "I can," I said. The projector flickered, and Derek's wall of numbers was gone. My screen took its place. It was not a graph of money. It was a sound map. "This is Ruth Alvarado," I said, clicking to a photo of her. 76 years old, former professional violist. This is her diagnostic hearing map. A conventional device just blasts volume into this entire upper range. It's loud. It's painful. And to her, it's mud. She came to my clinic this morning because she couldn't hear her granddaughter's violin. She called it noise. I clicked again. The AEP3 interface appeared. This is our algorithm, adaptive envelope processing. It doesn't just amplify, it isolates, separates, and preserves the shape of the sound, the harmonic envelopes. It gives her back the texture. I have a recording from 2 hours ago. I played the file, a test tone, my voice running diagnostics, and then Ruth's voice, thick with tears, captured by my laptop mic. I can hear the rosin. On the string, I can hear the wood. The room was dead silent. The hospital representative at the end of the table put his glasses on and leaned forward. Clasping his hands, I didn't stop. I was in my element. I moved to the next file. This is Mike, 45, construction foreman, tinnitus and severe industrial noise loss. He couldn't hear his wife in a restaurant. We built him a real-time environmental profile. It identifies his wife's primary speech frequency and actively dampens competing noise over 60 decibels. For the first time in a decade, they had a conversation at dinner. I clicked again. This is Alex, 16 years old, auditory processing disorder. His ears work, but his brain can't sort the inputs. The AEP3 inserts a variable micro delay, just 2 milliseconds, to give his neural pathways time to catch up. He passed his history final because he could finally understand the teacher. I brought up my final slide. It wasn't a projection. It was a photograph of the Riverbend Clinic. The aggressive peach walls, the folding table, the mismatched chairs. The technology is the enabler, I said, turning to face them directly. I left the microphone. I was one of them now. But it is not the innovation. Derek is right about one thing. Hospital revenue is a model, but it's a model that fails Ruth and Mike and Alex. They can't afford a $5,000 device. They can't wait 6 months for an audiologist. The real innovation, the one you came to see, is distribution. I pointed to the photo. This is the innovation. Community clinics. Technicians trained from the community, on-site, flexible, income-based pricing. We don't just sell them a device. We maintain a quality-of-life journal with them. We adapt the algorithm to their life, not the other way around. The data, the 4,900 fittings, the 82% improvement, it all came from here. Because we stopped treating people like balance sheet items and started treating them like partners in the research. Dr. Feld's eyes were locked on mine. She wasn't just listening, she was connecting the dots. She nodded slowly, a deep, considered motion. We don't need to scale the device, Ms. Turner, Dr. Feld said. We need to scale this model. The hospital channel, Derek suddenly blurted out. He had drifted to the side of the room, and his voice was tight with a desperation that was painful to hear. The hospital channel is our primary, proven revenue source. This clinic model is a rounding error. It's not sustainable. It's Mr. Vale. Amara's voice was not Arctic this time. It was steel. It was final. We are the North Star Impact Fund. Our mandate is sustainability of mission, not just profit. We are not interested in quarterly returns. We are interested in systemic change. Please, she said, turning back to me, allow the author of the model to continue. The thud of Derek's career hitting the floor was deafening. He was done. His face, which had been red with anger, went pale with a different, colder realization. He looked at Sutter, but Sutter was only looking at Dr. Feld. A strained, hopeful smile plastered on his face. I didn't need to continue. I had said my piece. Dr. Feld stood up. She gathered her papers. Thank you, Ms. Turner. That was precisely what we needed to see. She looked at her colleagues, who all nodded in unison. Our consortium will discuss this. We will have a final decision for your board by the end of the day. She walked to me, bypassing Sutter and Maya, and shook my hand. Her grip was firm. That was exceptional work. Ms. Turner, truly? The delegation filed out. Sutter and Maya scrambled after them, their voices a low, obsequious murmur of parking validation and further clarification. The demo room was suddenly vast and empty, except for me and Derek. He was still standing by the podium, a ghost at his own funeral. He was staring at my laptop, at the picture of the Riverbend Clinic. His eyes, when they finally lifted to mine, were not angry. They were not panicked. They were dead. They were dark, flat, and filled with a cold, absolute loathing. He knew I had beaten him, and he would never, ever forget it. The executive floor was silent as the investors left, but the vacuum they left behind was filled with a roiling, frantic energy. Sutter, Maya, and Eldon reappeared from the elevator bank. Their faces, which had been masks of hopeful obsequiousness for the investors, were now grim, tight, and furious. "My office, now," Sutter snapped. Derek, who had been lingering like a bad smell, started to follow. "Not you, Derek," Sutter said, without looking back. "Peyton." The command was for me, but the dismissal was for Derek. It was a small, petty, and brutal realignment of power. Derek froze, and I walked past him, following Sutter into the chairman's cavernous corner office. The room was all glass, brushed steel, and dark mahogany. It was designed to intimidate. I had been in here exactly twice before, both times to beg for funding for the community project. Today, I was not begging. Sutter did not sit. He prowled behind his massive desk. Maya took a seat at the small conference table, pulling out a legal pad. Eldon, the lawyer, stood by the window, hands clasped behind his back, positioning himself as a neutral observer, which he was not. "All right, Peyton," Sutter said, his voice a low growl. The hearty baritone was gone. This was the man who did hostile takeovers. "You pulled your stunt. You got their attention. You made your point. Now, what are your conditions? And I mean the real ones, not the fantasy you pitched me on the phone." I did not have a fantasy. I had a plan. I reached into my bag, the same one I'd had at the clinic. I pulled out my laptop, but I didn't open it. Tucked inside was a single, folded sheet of paper. I'd written it last night, after Derek had sent out a memo reallocating half my team's resources to commercial channel optimization. I had written it in anger, imagining a day I might need it. I never imagined it would be today. I unfolded the paper and placed it on the polished mahogany desk. Sutter stared at it, as if it were a bomb. "What's this?" "My conditions," I said. "The real ones." Maya leaned forward, squinting to read it. Sutter snatched it up. He read it aloud, his voice dripping with disbelief. 1. The immediate formation of the Equitable Access Division, a wholly independent entity within Resonex Labs. 2. The division's head, me, will report directly to the board of directors, not to the CTO or any other technical officer. 3. The division will receive a dedicated, protected budget to be determined based on the North Star funding, but with a guaranteed operational baseline from Resonex. 4. The division will have full and independent hiring and firing authority, including the right to internal transfer of personnel from other departments. He paused, his eyes scanning the last 2 points. His face darkened. 5. The Equitable Access Division will have exclusive control over the community model product roadmap. Derek Vale will have no authority, no input, no oversight, and no review privileges on this roadmap, ever. 6. The division's first-year mandate is the establishment of 12 new community points of contact in the next 12 months. He finished reading. He looked up, his face a mask of cold fury. "This is an abdication. You're asking me to carve up my own company. I'm asking you to protect the asset the investors just told you they want to fund," I said calmly. "This is absurd." The voice wasn't Sutter's. It was Derek's. He was standing in the doorway, his face slick with sweat. He must have run from his office. "She can't do this. This is blackmail. We can replicate the model without her. It's just a few clinics." "Is it Derek?" I asked, not turning to look at him. I kept my eyes on Sutter. "Is it just a few clinics? Or is it the AEP3 algorithm, which my team and I developed? Is it the 4,900 patient data logs that I personally curated? Is it the trust I built with the Vital Ear Hospitals Coalition, who you didn't even know were coming today? You can't replicate the mission. Derek, you don't even understand it. Derek's hand slammed down on the door frame. This is insanity. You're going to gut the entire company's structure, risk our entire technical integration, for one grant. This was the crux. This was the fight. It's not for the grant, Derek, I said, finally turning to face him. My voice was low, and I meant every word. It's for the mission. The grant is the result of the mission. The mission is what matters. And if Resonex isn't interested in that mission, I will walk out that door. I will call Dr. Backfired on my way to the parking lot. I will form the institute, and I will take the mission, the model, and their money with me. The room fell silent. Derek's mouth opened and closed. He had no response. He traded in spreadsheets. I traded in purpose. It was an unfair fight. I turned back to Sutter. He was watching me, his head tilted. He was no longer angry. He was calculating. This was a language he understood. He was weighing the cost of my terms against the cost of my departure. I watched him do the math. Beside him, Maya Crenshaw was doing her own. Her pen was flying across her legal pad. I could see the headings: PR risk, lead scientist walks, investor relations, North Star pullout, contract breach, vital ear. She was tallying the financial catastrophe. Eldon, the lawyer, finally spoke, his voice dry as dust. Harold, if Ms. Turner forms an independent entity, our IP position on the AEP3 algorithm becomes complicated. Her employment contract has non-compete clauses, but her termination. This morning, he said the word with delicate distaste, severely weakens our position for enforcement. She would argue she was terminated without cause. We would be in court for years. The investors would be gone on day one. Maya looked up from her pad. He's right. Harold, publicly, this is a disaster. A female RD lead, fired for, what? Creating a successful program. Then she walks and gets funded by the same people who were supposed to fund us. We would be a case study in corporate malpractice. Our stock would drop by 30% before the market closed. Sutter was trapped. The chess game was over. I hadn't just checkmated him. I had taken the board. He stared at the one-page document. He read point 5 again. No authority, no input, no oversight. He looked at Derek with a new, cold detachment. He was no longer a person. He was a liability. Sutter picked up his desk phone. Get me human resources, and get me a conference room, now. He put the phone down and looked at me. The Equitable Access Division is founded, effective immediately. He then looked at Derek, his voice devoid of all emotion. Derek, your abrupt management style has created a significant operational and financial risk. Until this is resolved, you are being reassigned, effective immediately. You will be assisting Eldon with a full regulatory compliance audit. We need to make sure all our paperwork is in order. It was a corporate execution, delivered in the blandest terms possible. He wasn't fired. He was reassigned. He was being sent to the corporate salt mines, a windowless office where he would read legal binders until he resigned out of sheer, soul-crushing boredom. Derek's face went from red to a pasty, sickly white. He looked at me, his eyes promising a war he had already lost. He said nothing. He just turned and walked away. Sutter pointed at Eldon and Maya. You two, draft the addendum to her contract. Draft the internal memo. I want it on my desk before the investor's call comes in. They scrambled out of the room. It was just me and Sutter. He sat down heavily in his chair. He looked old. You're a hell of a negotiator. Peyton, he said, I just presented the data. Harold, I said. Same as I did in the demo room. I left his office and walked back to the RD floor. The news had traveled faster than I had. The moment I emerged from the elevator, the entire floor, my floor, went silent. Lena Parkhurst was standing by my old cubicle. Her face was pale with anxiety. I just nodded. Once, a sound started. A single person clapping, then another. Within seconds, the entire RD team was on its feet, cheering. It wasn't just clapping, it was a roar. It was 7 years of pent-up frustration and belief, uncorked in a single, explosive moment. Lena ran to me, and we hugged, hard. People were patting me on the back, shaking my hand, tears in their eyes. I stayed for a moment. I smiled. I said thank you, but I didn't celebrate. I extricated myself, walked into the small glass-walled meeting room we called the fishbowl, and picked up a dry erase marker. The team's cheers were still echoing outside. I ignored them. I looked at the clean, white glass. My new division was born. My enemy was vanquished. The investors were happy, but I knew this wasn't an end. It was a beginning, and it was a beginning fraught with risk. I uncapped the marker and wrote on the glass, Sutter. He conceded, but he wasn't beaten. He will look for a way to absorb the division back. He hates losing control. Derek's network. He's not gone. He's just sidelined. His allies in finance and operations are still there. They will slow walk my budgets, my hiring, my supply chains, the AEP-3. The mission is secure. But Derek's shadow, his attempt to maximize revenue, still hangs over the core technology. I stood back, looking at the 3 new problems. The fight was over. The war had just begun. The 6 weeks that followed were a blur. The press, starved for a positive story in the tech sector, devoured ours. We were on the cover of industry magazines, the woman changing how we hear. Resonex Labs' mission-driven pivot. I hated the spotlight, but I used it. In every interview, I didn't talk about myself. I talked about Ruth, about Mike, about the 82%. The money followed the hype. North Star was euphoric. Dr. Miefeld made the announcement herself, and the first tranche wire transfer hit Resonex's accounts. $78 million, a number so large it was abstract, until it started to mean real things. We moved the Equitable Access division. I took my team out of the RD basement and claimed a half-empty floor that had been slated for a failed marketing venture. I had the cubicles torn out. We installed a new, state-of-the-art RD lab and a community demo room that was a perfect replica of the Riverbend Clinic, right down to the aggressive peach paint. Our walls became a gallery of our data. Lena called it the signal board. We pinned up the thank you notes, a crayon drawing of a red car from a 4-year-old who could finally hear his father read him a bedtime story, a blurry photo from Ruth Alvarado, showing her granddaughter, violin held high. At her recital, the attached note, in shaky cursive, just said, I heard every single note. She was magnificent. The Riverbend Clinic doubled its patient load. We used the new budget to open 2 more, staffing them with technicians we trained from those same communities. The Vital Ear Hospitals Coalition was ecstatic. On the surface, it was a perfect textbook victory, but the victory had been too easy. Sutter had folded too quickly, and Derek Vale, though banished, was a systems man. He understood the corporation's wiring. I'm a signal processor. I listen for the noise, the echoes, the spaces between the sound, and the corporate network was humming with a dissonance I didn't like. It started subtly, a budget requisition for a new audiometer. Lost by finance, a hiring request for 2 new technicians. Stuck in HR, pending review. This was the friction I expected. This was Derek's network of allies, gumming up the works. I started digging. Late one Tuesday, long after the floor was empty, I was tracking the digital signature on my lost budget request. I ran a diagnostic on the mail server logs, something my new admin rights allowed me to do, and I found it. It was an elegant piece of sabotage, a hidden routing rule. Any email I sent to Maya Crenshaw in finance or to Eldon Price in legal, that contained the keywords budget. Hiring, or AEP-3, was being automatically and invisibly forwarded to a compliance audit server. A server to which Derek Vale, in his capacity as a regulatory auditor, had full, unrestricted access. He wasn't in a salt mine. He was at a listening post. He was reading my every move before my recipients did. Sutter, my first note on the glass wall. He hadn't just conceded. He'd put a tap on my line. 2 days later, the agenda for the quarterly board of directors meeting landed in my inbox. As the head of a new, high-profile division, I was invited to present the first item, Equitable Access Division First 60 Days. It was a victory lap. But I had eyes on the executive floor now. An assistant, a woman Derek had once publicly humiliated over a typo, had been quietly feeding me information for weeks. She forgot a document at the printer, the real agenda, the one for the board's executive session. After I would be asked to leave the room, my agenda ended at item 8. Theirs had a 9th. Item 9 tabled discussion on the reevaluation of independent unit integration. Corporate language for a firing squad. Reevaluation. Integration. It was the plan. Let me do the hard work, secure the funds, and get the good press. Then, absorb my division back into the main technical branch. My independence, my team, my mission, all folded neatly back under a new corporate structure, back under their control. I now knew what they were planning. I still didn't know how. The answer arrived the next morning, as an encrypted, anonymous message in my internal inbox. It came from an engineer on my own team, covering their tracks. There was no text, just one attachment, a PowerPoint file. The title slide read, Optimizing Grant ROI, a Strategy for Phase 2. The author, listed at the bottom, Derek Vale. I opened it. My blood went cold. It was brilliant. It was pure, unadulterated poison, dressed as strategy. He wasn't attacking the community model. He was leveraging it. The deck was full of my data Ruth's story, Mike's success, the 82%. He proposed optimizing the $78 million grant by integrating our community clinics with the premium hospital channel. His plan used my clinics as low-cost screening centers, identify high-value customers, funnel them to the expensive hospital partners. The community clinics would be gutted, reduced to marketing funnels. Their primary mission of access for all twisted into leads for the wealthy. It was a plan to take my mission and turn it into a machine to print money for the shareholders. It was a plan to take the signal and turn it, once and for all, into noise. And I knew, with sickening certainty, that Sutter would see it as the perfect compromise. I didn't panic. I got organized. First, I saved the deck. I saved the email server logs. I saved the 2 different board agendas. I saved them all to a small, encrypted solid-state drive. Second, I went home and pulled out my new employment contract, the one Eldon Price had drafted in a single afternoon. I had read it 10 times, but now I read it with new eyes. I was looking for the clause I had insisted on, the one they thought was just sentimental garbage. It was there. Section 14.6, a small carve-out, granting the Equitable Access Division the right to pursue external nonprofit partnerships to ensure the fidelity and continuity of the mission. Eldon thought it was a platitude. I knew it was an escape hatch. Third, I picked up my personal phone. I sent a secure text to the one person outside this building who mattered, Dr. Amara Feld. Amara, I wrote, I have a hypothetical question I need to ask you, off the record. If you discovered the Resonex community model was about to be internally compromised, what is North Star's plan B? Finally, I went to the safe in my closet. I pulled out my go bag, another external drive. This one held my life's work, the complete roadmap, all 4,900 patient data logs, and the source code for the AEP-3. But it wasn't the version Resonex owned. It was the original build. The one I had developed as my thesis, the one I had licensed to the company, not sold. Weeks ago, as a precaution, I had filed for a separate, parallel copyright and a new open-source license for nonprofit and educational use. It was clean, it was legal, it was mine. I went back to my office. I looked at the 3 risks I had written on the glass wall. I erased them. I uncapped the marker and wrote a new line. A reminder to myself. If they pull me back, I move straight forward. My phone buzzed on the desk. A reply from Amara. Interesting hypothetical, it read. I am in Lisbon for the Global Tech Conference. Perhaps we should discuss this hypothetical in person. The Lisbon Conference Center was a different universe from the gray corporate box of Resonex Labs. It was all glass and light, echoing with the sound of 1,000 conversations in 12 languages, smelling of strong espresso and new carpet. I wasn't a problem employee here. I was the keynote speaker. I stood in the wings, the low murmur of the crowd, a physical presence. My topic: scalable models for community-based hearing augmentation. The Resonex logo, a cool, sterile blue, glowed on the massive holding slide on stage. My phone vibrated in my jacket pocket. I expected a 5-minute warning from the stage manager. Instead, it was a secure text from Lena. It was just a photograph, a picture of a laptop screen, clearly taken in haste. It was a single slide from a new presentation. It was an organizational chart. At the very top, a box labeled Derek Vale, CTO. Beneath him, the main technical division, and branching off that, like a barnacle on a ship, was a small subordinate box. Community Access Unit, formerly EAD. A second text from Lena came through. Peyton, this is the deck for the board meeting, the 9 a.m. executive session, the one that's happening right now. They're not just reevaluating. They're burying us. He's back. Sutter signed off. I looked at the slide again. Under Derek, my independence, my direct line to the board, my protected budget, all of it, erased. They were using my keynote in Lisbon as the perfect cover, while I was on a global stage, accepting accolades for their mission-driven pivot. They were back home, breaking the promise and strangling the mission in its cradle. The moderator's voice broke through my thoughts. An 82% improvement in speech recognition. Please join me in welcoming, from Resonex Labs, Ms. Peyton Turner. I put the phone in my pocket. The vibration stopped. I walked out of the darkness and into the light. The stage was vast. The audience was a sea of focused, intelligent faces. Academics, public health experts, engineers, and investors, my people. I took the remote from the moderator. I looked at the Resonex logo one last time, and I clicked. It vanished. My own first slide appeared. A clean, dense waveform. Good morning, I said. My voice was amplified, crisp, and filled the auditorium. For decades, we have been told that the solution to hearing loss is amplification. We've been told the problem is volume. This is a lie. A ripple of interest. The problem isn't volume, it's clarity. It's the signal-to-noise ratio. For 7 years, my team and I have been developing a new approach. We call it adaptive envelope processing. For the next 10 minutes, I gave them the unadulterated science. I held nothing back. I showed them the core of the algorithm, the neural net modeling, the real-time environmental sampling. I showed them the data from the 4,900 fittings. I showed them the hard, cold numbers that proved, unequivocally, that our model worked. The audience was hooked. I could see them leaning forward, taking notes. Then, I stopped. But data, I said, my voice softening, is just a description. It's not the purpose. The numbers are the what. I want to talk about the why. I clicked. The data vanished, replaced by the photo of Ruth Alvarado. This is Ruth, a 76-year-old former violist. Her insurance-provided device was adequate, but adequate meant she couldn't hear the difference between a violin and a synthesizer. She came to us because she wanted to hear her granddaughter's recital, not just hear it. Hear it. Click, a photo of Mike, the construction foreman. This is Mike. He was told his industrial hearing loss was a fact of life. He couldn't hear his wife if the television was on. Adequate was isolating him in his own home. Click, Alex, the 16-year-old. This is Alex. He has auditory processing disorder. He was told to just try harder. Adequate was failing him out of school. I paused, letting the 3 faces hang in the air. We didn't just give them a device. We built a model with them. A community-first system where the technology is adapted to the person, not the other way around. where access is not an afterthought, but the entire point. I took a breath. This was the moment. For the past several months, we have run this successful, proven model from within a for-profit corporation, and today, I am here to tell you why that model, while effective, is ultimately insufficient. The room went dead silent. This was not in the program. A for-profit structure will always answer to the spreadsheet. It will always be tempted to optimize ROI. It will always be tempted to take a mission built for people like Ruth and Mike and twist it into a lead generation funnel for a premium hospital channel. In the front row, I saw Dr. Amara Feld's eyes lock on mine. She wasn't surprised. She was waiting. The mission, I said, my voice rising, cannot be a rounding error. It cannot be optimized. And it cannot and will not be subordinated to a corporate structure that sees it as a liability to be reintegrated and buried. I clicked the remote one last time. The Resonex logo didn't return. A new, clean graphic appeared. Simple text over a stylized waveform. Equal Sound Institute. This morning, I announced, my voice ringing with a clarity I had never felt before. I am announcing the formation of the Equal Sound Institute, an independent, non-profit RD organization dedicated to developing and deploying hearing technology for mass-market, public health access. The room was still frozen. Our model is different. We will be funded by impact investors and public health grants. We will license our core technology, including the open-source community version of the AEP3, on an ability-to-pay basis. We will build a global, open network of community clinics, sharing our protocols, our data, and our mission. We are not here to sell a product. We are here to change the system. As if I had flipped a switch, Dr. Amara Feld stood up. She turned, not to me, but to the audience. And North Star Impact Fund, Amara said, her voice clear and strong, is proud to announce our position as the anchor funder for the Equal Sound Institute. We are joined in this by the Public Health Initiative and the Geneva Medical Trust, who are co-funding this effort. A man in the front row stood up. A woman 2 rows back did the same. They nodded. The auditorium exploded. It wasn't polite applause. It was a roar, a standing ovation. People were whistling, cheering. They understood. This wasn't a product pitch. It was a revolution. In my pocket, my phone began to vibrate. It wasn't a buzz. It was a seizure, a continuous, frantic, shuddering panic. I smiled at the audience, stepped back from the podium, and walked into the wings as the applause washed over me. The stage manager looked like he was going to faint. I pulled out the phone. The board meeting, the news alerts from Lisbon had just hit their phones. In the middle of their secret Item 9, I had just vaporized their agenda from 3,000 miles away. The screen was a frantic cascade of panic. Maya Crenshaw. What have you done? The news wires just lit up. The investors on our call are asking what this means. Maya Crenshaw. Harold is trying to reach you. He's furious. The Vital Ear Coalition rep just said, "This institute is what we wanted all along." Maya Crenshaw. Peyton, call Harold. The entire consortium is demanding to speak to you. Only you. They are pausing the Resonex discussion. The phone immediately began to ring. An international number, Harold Sutter. I took a deep breath. I let the roar of the crowd in Lisbon fade. I answered. Peyton. His voice was a strangled yell, thin and crackling with transatlantic rage. What is this? What have you done? You are in breach of contract. This is theft. This is... Hello, Harold, I said. My voice was perfectly calm. Are you calling about Item 9? The one where you plan to put my division under Derek Vale? Silence, nothing but the faint static of the connection. I heard him take a ragged breath. Peyton, he said, the rage gone, replaced by the cold, heavy voice of a man calculating his losses. You've made your move. What do you want? I looked through the curtain at the packed auditorium. I thought of my team, of Lena. I thought of Ruth. I want nothing. Harold, I said. Nothing for me. I let the line hang for a beat, but I want everything for my team. This is a flagrant, indefensible breach of your employment agreement. Peyton. Sutter's voice was no longer a transatlantic yell. It had dropped to a low, cold, legalistic threat. I could hear the rustle of papers. Eldon Price was feeding him lines. You are in violation of your non-disclosure, your non-compete, and your intellectual property covenants. We will sue you. We will sue your institute. We will file an injunction, and we will bury this entire circus by morning. The applause from the auditorium was a dull roar behind the stage wall. I was hidden in the darkness. A single blue exit sign casting a cold light on the concrete floor. Will you, Harold? I asked. My voice was quiet, but the microphone on my phone was good. I'd ask you to check the contract Eldon drafted for me 6 weeks ago, the one the board ratified, the one you all signed. I heard only the faint hiss of the open line. I could picture the scene: Eldon scrambling on his laptop, Maya's face pale, Derek looking like he was about to have an aneurysm. I direct you to Section 14.6, I continued, helpfully. It's the clause titled Mission Fidelity and Nonprofit Partnerships, the one you all thought was me being sentimental. It grants the head of the Equitable Access Division me the explicit right to pursue external nonprofit partnerships to ensure the fidelity and continuity of the mission, a mission which, by convening to vote on Item 9, the board was actively attempting to betray. You didn't just break your promise, Harold, you triggered my escape clause. Harold. A new voice on the line, clear, sharp, and utterly devoid of patience. Dr. Amara Feld. You are on speakerphone with the entire North Star Consortium, and we have been listening to this entire exchange. We also have a copy of your Item 9 agenda. This is not just an internal dispute. This is a material breach of our funding agreement. Amara, this is... Sutter's voice was choked. This is a misunderstanding. Peyton is a disgruntled employee. She is the author of the model we funded, Harold, and your attempt to bury that model constitutes bad faith. As such, North Star is exercising our Mission Integrity Clause. Effective immediately, 40% of the $78 million grant is being reallocated. Reallocated where Maya Crenshaw's voice, thin and terrified. To the Equal Sound Institute, Amara said. I stepped further into the shadows, away from the stage door. Actually, Amara, I said, my voice cutting cleanly into the speakerphone in that doomed boardroom. It's 50%. I could hear Amara's sharp intake of breath. She hadn't known. Peyton by 50%, I confirmed. I finalized the co-funding agreement with the Geneva Medical Trust and the Vital Ear Coalition an hour before I went on stage. They're matching the extra 10%. The joint press release is scheduled to go out at 6 a.m. tomorrow. Half the money is already gone. Harold, a strangled, furious sound came over the line. It's theft. It's intellectual property theft. Derek Vale. He hadn't been smart enough to stay silent. The AEP3 algorithm belongs to Resonex. She can't take it. That is my tech. Is it Derek? I asked, my voice as cold as the concrete floor. Is it your tech? Or is it the commercial-grade version you were trying to file a parallel patent on? Under your own name, the one the Ethics Committee is currently investigating. That finally produced absolute silence. The static on the line was the only sound. The Resonex-owned corporate algorithm is safe. Eldon, I said, speaking directly to the lawyer. It remains your property. You can sell it to your premium hospital channels all day long. But that's not what I'm taking. I'm taking the community version, the original build, the one I developed as my doctoral thesis, and then licensed to Resonex, not sold. The one my contract section 14.6, again specifically allows me to retain for educational and nonprofit use. I have the copyright certificates right here in my bag. I filed them 6 weeks ago, just in case. Another beat of silence. The chess game was over. I had just taken his queen, his rook, and both his knights. What? What do you want? Peyton. It was Sutter. His voice was a hollowed-out echo. The fury was gone. The threats were gone. All that was left was the sound of a man staring into a financial abyss. I told you, Harold, everything for my team. I don't want a buyout. I don't want a severance. I want one thing, and one thing only. I let the line stretch, letting him imagine what it could be. I want a clean break, with no restrictions, for 20 of my people, the 20 best engineers, audiologists, and community specialists in the Equitable Access Division. I want them released from their non-compete and non-solicitation clauses, effective immediately. They get an open, 24-hour window to leave Resonex and join the Equal Sound Institute, with no penalties, no litigation, and no interference from you, ever. 20 people, Sutter choked. That's not a departure. That's an evisceration. You're taking the entire division. I'm giving them a choice, I countered. You're the one who just tried to sell them out. I heard a frantic, muffled whispering. Harold, listen to me. It was Maya's voice, no longer public, but raw and desperate. She must have put her hand over the phone, but not well enough. We have to do this. We have to let her. It's suicide, Maya, Sutter's muffled reply. It's not, she snapped back. Don't you see? If we fight her, if we sue, Amara pulls the other 50%. We lose everything. We lose the money, the Vital Ear contract, and the entire story. We become the villains. But if we partner with her, if we let her go, we can spin this. We can call it a strategic spin-off. We can say we're supporting her nonprofit. We can keep the other half of the money and the hospital contracts. It's the only move we have left. Eldon's funereal voice joined in. She's right, Harold, the shareholders. They won't ask why we lost Peyton. They'll ask why we terminated the one human being our lead investors were willing to listen to. The PR optics of suing a newly formed nonprofit to deny sound to the poor. It's catastrophic. We have to take Maya's deal. The whispering stopped. The line was heavy with the silence of total, crushing surrender. How many? Sutter asked. His voice was so soft I could barely hear it. It was no longer a question from a chairman. It was a plea from a broken man. How many people will you actually take? He was hoping I would leave him someone. He was hoping it was a bluff. I looked out at the stage, where the moderator was nervously gesturing for me to come back out. I'm going to take the ones who choose the mission. Harold, I said, and I hung up. I didn't wait for a reply. I didn't give him a chance to argue. I ended the call, silencing the chaos in that boardroom 3,000 miles away. I stood in the silence of the wings. The adrenaline was pounding in my ears, a high-frequency hum. The fight was over. I opened my secure messaging app. I had a draft message, saved for this exact moment, a list of 18 names, not 20. The 2 extra slots were a bluff. To make him panic, I knew exactly who I needed. The message was simple. It was a formal offer of employment at the Equal Sound Institute, with a modest salary bump, and a link to the mission statement I had just delivered on stage. The last line. The choice is yours. The work is real. I'm waiting. I hit send. I didn't wait to see the fallout in Lisbon. I was on the next flight out. A 14-hour race against the sun, landing in a city that was just waking up to the news. My phone, which had been silent on the flight, lit up the second I switched it on. It was not the chaos from Resonex. It was the response from my team. Lena Parkhurst. I'm in. Send me the coordinates. I've already backed up the A drive. Miguel Velez, my lead audiologist. My wife is going to kill me, but yes, 1,000 times yes. Sarah Jenkins, senior signal engineer. I've been waiting for this day for 3 years. I'm already packing my desk. One by one, they came in, a flood of loyalty. By the time I had cleared customs, 16 of the 18 people I had written to had replied. 16 yes replies. 2 asked for time. 1 had a child in the NICU. The other was 2 weeks from closing on a mortgage. They apologized profusely. It didn't matter. 16 was a critical mass. It wasn't just a team. It was a movement. I hadn't just taken the brain of the community program. I'd taken its heart and its hands. The RD department at Resonex, the one Derek had tried to absorb, was now just a collection of empty chairs and useless hardware. We didn't have an office. We had something better. We had the first tranche of the North Star funding, which Amara had wired to our new nonprofit's bank account before I even landed. Lena and I found our headquarters in a defunct brick warehouse in the Riverbend district, a place that smelled of old machinery and rain. It was 5 blocks from the community clinic. It was perfect. We didn't hire designers. We bought steel-toed boots, sledgehammers, and paint. My team, my new Equal Sound Institute team, spent the first week tearing down old plasterboard. We spent the budget on what mattered: a shielded, state-of-the-art clean lab, and a community testing center that was 3 times the size of the lab. On the main wall, where a corporate logo should have been, I painted our new slogan myself, in the same aggressive peach as the clinic. Clear sound for all. We were building a lab, but the world outside wasn't waiting. The news was spreading. I was on the phone, day and night. Not with executives, but with partners. The Vital Ear Hospitals Coalition was ecstatic. The bureaucracy of Resonex had vanished. They weren't dealing with a legal department. They were dealing with me. In 2 weeks, we signed memorandums of understanding with 10 major public health centers. We set a goal that was so insane it felt right: 6 new community points of contact, fully operational, in the next 90 days. My team, working on folding tables amid the construction noise, built the entire deployment plan in a single 20-hour marathon session. While they built the logistics, I built the trust. My first major act was not to file a patent. It was to hire an independent ethics and privacy review board. I gave them the full, open-source code for the community version of the AEP3. Find the flaws, I told them. Find the biases. We will be transparent. We will not deploy technology that exploits the communities we claim to serve. The noise of our creation was matched by the sound of Resonex's collapse. A news alert pinged my phone. Resonex Labs, RSNX stock, falls 17% pre-market on news of funding reallocation and RD team defection. Sutter had lost hundreds of millions of dollars in shareholder value, all because he couldn't stand to lose control of a division he had once called a money pit. The internal reports, fed to me by allies still trapped inside, were just as brutal. Derek Vale was facing a full-blown corporate tribunal. His optimizing ROI deck, the one that proposed gutting my clinics, had been leaked to the entire board. They were desperate for a scapegoat, and he was it. The ethics committee, which I had quietly tipped off before I left, had also formally launched an investigation into his attempt to file a personal variant patent on the A-loop algorithm. He was finished. The final, desperate volley came on a Friday night. I was at the warehouse, helping Lena calibrate the new audiometers. My phone rang with an unlisted number. Peyton? It was Harold Sutter. His voice was not angry. It was not loud. It was worse. It was a hollow, exhausted, defeated sound. "Harold," I said, walking away from the noise of the lab. They're calling for my resignation," he said. "The board, the shareholders. It's a mess. You've done well. Peyton, you've burned the whole thing down." "I didn't burn it down, Harold. I just walked out of the building while it was on fire." "Come back," he whispered. I almost laughed. "What? Come back. I'm calling you unofficially, off the record. The board will do anything. We'll fire Derek, a public execution. We'll give you his job, Executive Vice President of Technology, EVP. We'll double the budget, double the original $78 million. We'll put you on the board. Just tell the press this was all a complex negotiation. Tell them you're coming home." He was offering me the crown, the keys to the kingdom, the very title that Derek had lusted after. He was offering me everything, and he still, after all this, had no idea who I was. I looked through the plastic sheeting of the new lab. I saw Miguel Velez, our audiologist, teaching 2 new hires community volunteers how to read a diagnostic map. He was smiling. "You think the win is an EVP title, don't you?" "Harold," I said. "It's the top. Peyton, it's the job." "It's just a job. Harold, it's just an office. I'm not interested in your title. I'm not interested in your money. I've already chosen to go where the patients are waiting." I hung up. I cut him off. I walked back into the light of the lab. My laptop, perched on a stack of drywall, chimed. An email. It was from Lena, but it was a forward. It had been leaked. An internal communication, sent from Amara Feld's office, blind copy to an ally of ours within the Vital Ear Coalition. The subject line was chilling. Subject urgent. Investor meeting. Resonex equal. Sound continuity. The body was short. All consortium members. Given the catastrophic failure of governance at Resonex and the market's response, our primary investment is now at risk. We are convening an emergency, in-person meeting tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. We will require the presence of Ms. Peyton Turner. We must ensure the continuity of the impact. The Resonex board is no longer stable. This meeting will be decisive. They weren't just funding me. They were calling me into a meeting I wasn't supposed to see, to make a decision about the company that had tried to destroy me. They were asking me to help them decide its fate. The emergency meeting was not held at the gleaming, soulless tower of Resonex Labs. It was in a private conference room at a downtown law firm, smelling of old leather, floor polish, and 9-figure decisions. The air was thick and still. I was there. So was Lena, who I had brought as my technical lead. On one side of the massive, dark wood table sat the investors, all 7 of them. Dr. Amara Feld, flanked by the representatives from the 2 public health funds, and the 4 other impact investors who, until yesterday, had been part of the Resonex consortium. They looked grim, focused, and finished with corporate games. "Ms. Turner," Amara began, her voice crisp in the quiet room. "We are not here to negotiate. We are here to pivot. The Resonex board has proven, in no uncertain terms, that they are not fit to be stewards of this mission. Their actions represent a catastrophic failure of governance." A man I recognized from the Vital Ear Hospitals Coalition spoke up. "We are not in the business of funding corporate civil wars. Peyton, we are in the business of scaling your model. Resonex is the noise. You are the signal." Amara slid a thick, bound document across the polished table. It was not a Resonex document. The cover was blank. "This is our proposal," she said. "A new term sheet, a 9-figure commitment, in tranches, directly to the Equal Sound Institute." I opened it. I scanned the numbers. They were larger than I had anticipated, but I wasn't looking for the amount. I was looking for the clauses, and I found it. Section 4, the mission lock. "The funds are contingent," Amara said, seeing my eyes land on it. "On the Institute maintaining its nonprofit status and community-first pricing model. The money cannot be used to chase hospital contracts. It cannot be diverted to premium channels. This term sheet locks the mission to the money. It's the opposite of Derek's deck. It's an anti-ROI clause." Before I could respond, the heavy doors of the conference room opened. A man I didn't recognize, flanked by a terrified-looking Eldon Price, strode in. The new man was all pinstripes and aggression. "This meeting is concluded," he announced, dropping a thick legal folder onto the table, shattering the silence. "I am outside counsel for Resonex Labs. My client has filed an emergency cease and desist and a motion for a preliminary injunction against Ms. Turner and her illegal shell corporation." Eldon wouldn't look at me. Amara Feld did not flinch. She didn't even look surprised. She simply reached into her own briefcase and pulled out a different document, placing it on top of the lawyer's. "Counselor," Amara said, her voice dangerously calm. "You're late. This is an independent legal opinion from the top IP firm in the state. It confirms 2 things. 1, that Section 14.6 of Ms. Turner's contract was, in fact, a valid escape clause, triggered by the board's own malfeasance, and 2, she slid a second document over. This is the copyright registration for the Community AEP3 algorithm, filed under an open-source license for non-profit use, which predates her re-employment. Resonex doesn't own the mission, and it doesn't even fully own the code. You have no injunction, you have no case. You have only a negotiation for your corporate client's very survival. Now, please sit down, or get out. The pinstriped lawyer stared at the documents. He read the heading. He read the name of the law firm Amara had hired. His face, which had been red with bluster, went a pale, sickly gray. As he stood there, frozen, Lena's laptop chimed. She'd been setting it up quietly at the end of the table. "Dr. Feld," Lena said, her voice clear. "Pardon the interruption. Peyton and I felt it was important to remember what we're actually talking about." She turned the laptop around. It was a live video feed. The camera was shaky, positioned at the back of a small, packed auditorium. It was the Riverbend Community Center. On the small stage, a young girl in a simple black dress was holding a violin. "This is Ruth Alvarado's granddaughter," I said, my voice quiet. "This is her recital. It's happening right now." And then, she began to play. The sound, coming through Lena's high-fidelity speakers, was not a recording. It was alive. It was the sound of Bach, pure, aching, and perfect. In the third row of the video feed, the camera zoomed in. Ruth Alvarado was sitting there, her eyes closed, tears streaming down her face, her hand held to her chest. She was hearing every single note. The room full of 9-figure investors, angry lawyers, and one rogue engineer fell completely silent. We watched. We listened. We watched a woman listen to her granddaughter for the first time. The sound of the rosin on the string, the sound of the wood. This was the signal. My phone, sitting on the table, suddenly buzzed. The vibration was violent in the stillness. I looked down. Harold Sutter. I let it buzz. The violin music swelled. It buzzed again, and again. "He's not going to stop," I said. I picked up the phone. I pressed speaker. "Peyton." His voice was a panicked rasp, the sound of pure, unadulterated fear. "Peyton, listen to me. Don't sign it. Don't sign that paper. This is, we can fix this. I fired Derek. I fired him the board. We'll do anything. If you sign with them, Peyton, Resonex will. We will." The violin hit a high, clear, perfect note, a note of absolute clarity. I looked at the phone. I looked at the pinstriped lawyer, now sweating. I looked at Amara. "Mr. Sutter," I said, my voice cutting through his. "You cut me off in the middle of my goodbye speech. Today, I'm cutting you off in the middle of yours." I ended the call. I turned back to the term sheet. I uncapped a simple, black pen. In front of the 7 investors, in front of the silenced Resonex lawyers, while the sound of that violin still filled the room. I signed my name. "The activation clause is now in effect," Amara said. As I finished, she nodded to her team. 50% of the total fund will be transferred to Equal Sound's accounts within the hour. The remainder will be released as you hit your milestones, 12 new clinics in the next 6 months. The next morning, the joint press release hit the wires. North Star Impact Fund confirmed its pivot, announcing the Equal Sound Institute as its new lead strategic partner in hearing health, Resonex Labs. It was noted in the final paragraph, would be retained as a corporate licensing partner for their existing hospital channels. We weren't their spin-off. They were our footnote. Derek Vale's resignation was announced at 8:45 a.m. By 9, the Resonex Ethics Committee announced it was launching its own separate investigation into his patent filings. I didn't read any of it. I was at the new headquarters, the warehouse. It was chaos. Phones were ringing. The paint was still drying. My 16-person team was huddled around a bank of monitors, routing calls from community centers in 3 different states. And in the middle of our new, real-life, peach-painted community clinic, Our first official patient was sitting in the chair, a 12-year-old girl, a violinist, who was struggling to hear her teacher. Her mother stood in the corner, her hands twisted in anxiety. My phone, the one on my hip, began to ring, and buzz, and chime, emails, texts, reporters, lawyers, the noise. It was deafening. I looked at the vibrating, screaming device. I looked at the girl. I looked at Miguel, who was waiting for my signal. I reached down, silenced the phone, and dropped it into my bag. I looked at Miguel, and I smiled. "Start the frequency response sweep," I said. "Thank you so much for listening to this story. We're a community, and I'd love to know where you're listening from. Let me know in the comments what part of the world you're in and share your own thoughts. Please subscribe to Boss Revenge Stories, like this video, and if you really loved it, please hit that hype button. It helps get this story out to more people, and it truly supports the channel.